Assalamu alaikum, grade 7. How are you? I hope all of you are hale and hearty, healthy and wealthy, are going to school and enjoying your life. But Faiza Nadeem here, your English teacher, is wishing and praying that all of you have gone wise enough to realize the significance of your academics. So what we are going to do today in our English lesson? I'm going to tell you. Let's go together. जी, मेरा बहुत प्यारा बेटा और बहुत प्यारी बिटिया. What is the board telling you? The board is telling you to open your Oxford Progressive Reader Book 7 out in specific. And the name of the unit that we shall be doing today is Unit 10 Achievements. Achievements का मतलब कामयाबियाँ. ठीक है? और इन कामयाबियों के अंदर डिफरेंट छोटे छोटे कॉम्प्रीहेंशंस हैं जो डिफरेंट अचीवमेंट्स से रिलेटेड है, राइट? उसके सिलसिले का जो पहला कॉम्प्रीहेंशन है वो हम कर रहे हैं द रेस. द रेस इज कंप्राइजिंग ऑफ पेज नंबर 256 टू 262. अब ये कॉम्प्रीहेंशन जहाँ से हम पढ़ रहे हैं वहाँ डैनी एक बच्चा है जो 13-14 साल का बच्चा है. वो स्कूल रेस में हिस्सा ले रहा है. थोड़ा सा बैकग्राउंड स्टोरी डैनी की बताई गई है कि डैनी की जो अम्मी है वो अफ्रीका से भाग के आई होती हैं क्योंकि वहाँ पर एक आदमी उनको बहुत बुरी तरह बुली कर रहा होता है जिसका नाम होता है क्रिस. प्रॉब्लम ये है कि डैनी की अम्मी ने एक अफ्रीकन से शादी की होती है और जब वो यूरोप में यानी इंग्लैंड में आती हैं तो रेशियल डिस्क्रिमिनेशन की वजह से का रंग के तासुब की वजह से लोग डैनी को एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते. वो उसके साथ थोड़े परे परे रहते हैं और उसको बुली भी करते हैं जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ हिज स्किन कलर. तो डैनी वाज फाइंडिंग इट डिफिकल्ट टू एडजस्ट टू द न्यू सराउंडिंग्स, टू द न्यू एरिया. अलॉन्ग विद दैट उसकी जो ग्रैंड डैड हैं, जो उसके नाना हैं, वो भी डैनी को ज़्यादा प्यार नहीं करते और उनको वो नाम देता है ग्रैंपा ग्रंट्स. ठीक है, यानी कि वो हमेशा गुस्सा करते हैं डैनी को देख के. अब डैनी की एक स्कूल रेस है ये जिसकी अचीवमेंट डैनी को बचपन से एडल्टहुड में ले आती है. उसकी तमाम प्रॉब्लम्स, तमाम सिचुएशंस को नॉर्मलाइज या सॉल्व कर देती है. और यही अचीवमेंट्स, यही उस डैनी की कामयाबी इस स्पेसिफिक कॉम्प्रीहेंशन में बताई गई है कि किस तरह डैनी वो रेस बराबर करता है, इक्वल करता है और यूं उसके नाम पर लगा जो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन का धब्बा है वो हट जाता है. इवन ग्रैंपा ग्रम्स जो हैं वो भी डैनी को अपनाने के लिए तैयार हो जाते हैं. यानी सिर्फ एक दौड़ डैनी की ज़िंदगी को उलट पुलट करके रख देती है. बाकी का कॉम्प्रीहेंशन क्वेश्चंस के साथ साथ करते हैं. Write down the ordinal numbers in the first paragraph. What do these numbers refer to? फर्स्ट पैराग्राफ में ऑर्डिनल नंबर्स दिए हुए हैं 4th, 3rd, 2nd. ये ऑर्डिनल नंबर्स रेफर कर रहे थे उस रेस में जहाँ डैनी दौड़ रहा था डैनी की स्पेसिफिक पोजीशन को. यानी दौड़ते दौड़ते पहले वो 4th हुआ, फिर वो 3rd हुआ और फिर वो 2nd हुआ. 2nd के बाद डैनी ने अपना पूरा जोर लगाया एंड ही फिनिश्ड नेक टू नेक विद द गाय हु स्टूड फर्स्ट. ठीक है, यानी देयर वर 2 first positions. Why are the phrases without fear and the promised land repeated throughout the text? Well, the phrases without fear and the promised land are repeated throughout the text because Danny and his mom had run from the country they have been living in because one man was specifically making it difficult for them to live. Along with that, they were hoping and wishing that the land they have landed in, Europe, would be the promised land and they would be able to start a new life without any fear, without any hope, without any fear, ठीक है? And in the protection of the law, right? This is your answer of question number 2, reading for understanding. Let's move on to question number 3. And question number 3 says, explain how Danny feels about the race in paragraph 2. Paragraph 2 mein Danny was in the 2nd position and he thinks that he has given all his energy. There was nothing left in him. and he has given all whatever was in him to the race, to the competition, and he thought he is going to end up in the second position and thus lose the race to participate in the final cup event. So he was full of despair. Despair क्या होता है? ना उम्मीदी. He was thinking that he would lose the race, and he was, or his heart was filled with hopelessness. See, so this was how Danny felt about the race in the paragraph 2. This was the third question. Let's move on to the fourth one. The fourth question say, explain the meaning of the metaphor, the jigsaw falling apart. Explain why it is or is not an effective metaphor for describing Danny's feeling. Well, Danny's life had been broken into pieces. His life had been broken into pieces, and he had put up his life together like jigsaw puzzle. And as he was in despair of losing the race, he thought that all the jigsaw pieces that were combined together with him were falling apart. So the way he had put up his life, the way he had collected his life was falling apart, was dividing in different pieces as the pieces of jigsaw puzzle fall apart. ठीक है, जब आप जिक्सॉ के पजल्स कलेक्ट करते हैं तो बड़ी खूबसूरत सी पिक्चर बन जाती है. तो वो एक खूबसूरत सी पिक्चर बना रहा था अपनी नई लाइफ के लिए, लेकिन जब वो रेस लूज करने लगा तो उसको लगा कि जो टुकड़े टुकड़े जोड़ के उसने अपनी एक खूबसूरत जिंदगी बनाई थी या वो बनाने का सोच रहा था, वो सब टुकड़े टूट रहे हैं और अलहदा अलहदा हो रहे हैं. आपको आंसर फिर से फ्रेज आउट कर देती हूँ, गौर से सुन लो. The meaning of the metaphor, the jigsaw falling apart, is that the life that he had built up using the different pieces had been again in the danger of falling apart. ठीक है? It is an effective metaphor because we know that Denny was completely frightened when he had come to Europe, and now the promised land had helped him, assisted him, aided him in building up a new life. And he thought that if he would lose the race, he would lose all the energy or stamina to bring a new life. Explain screaming and scouring and describe their effectiveness in the text. Scream क्या हो रहे थे? Scream उसके muscles कर रहे थे. ठीक है? Scour क्या हो रही थी? Scour उसकी breath हो रही थी. Like he was running so hard that his muscles were screaming and his breath was scouring, right? He was running so hard that all his body ached. They ached. They asked him to stop. They asked him to stop the trauma that they had been going through. But he kept on because all his life was at stake. His future was at stake. Right? इसको फिर से आपके लिए phrase out कर देती हूँ. The word screaming is used to describe how the muscles of his body ached, how the muscles of his legs ached, and his breath was scouring, like he was out of breath. He was wheezing like an asthma patient, and their effectiveness is actually describing what sort of trauma, what sort of hard work, what sort of fatigue Danny was going through at that specific time, what was happening in his mind and what was happening to his body. There was a constant tussle between mind and body regarding what Danny's experience was in that specific race. Danny's handshake with the Alex Doyle is no longer thinking black and white. Explain the phrase. शुरू में मैंने आपको बताया था कि जब वो वहाँ पर आया था तो since he was the son of a black father, he was under the bullying of racial discrimination, ठीक है, और उस bullying की वजह से उसके साथ बहुत इम्तियाजी सलूक किया गया था। जब एलेक्स डॉयल ने उसको हैंडशेक किया तो एलेक्स डॉयल उससे सही दोस्ती करना चाहता था, पक्की वाली दोस्ती करना चाहता था, regardless of the fact that Danny was a black boy, ठीक है। तो हम इस आंसर को यूं फ्रेज आउट करेंगे, Danny's handshake with Alex Doyle is no longer thinking black and white because Alex Doyle did not consider his skin color before making him his friend. So he made him his friend regardless the color of his skin. ठीक है? Why is this moment of handshake and winning important to Danny? This moment of handshake and winning was important to Danny because this was his final certificate of acceptance. He was finally accepted in the new society with the friends in the new school. ठीक है, यानी ये हैंडशेक और ये विनिंग डैनी के लिए इसलिए इम्पॉर्टेंट थी कि वो वहाँ रिकग्नाइज हो गया, एक्सेप्ट हो गया वहाँ पर। How can you tell from the text that Danny's grandfather's attitude is changing towards Danny? He smiled at Danny, ठीक है, and there was some remorse in his eyes, like he wanted to make up of the lost years that he had been unable to love Danny up, that he had been unable to not love his grandson, ठीक है। तो इस आंसर को आप यूं स्पेसिफाई करेंगे that Danny's grandfather's attitude is changing towards Danny when he looked at Danny with a genuine smile. There was a twinkle of love in his grandfather's eyes for Danny, and there was a little bit of remorse that he had wasted all those years not loving Danny up, and he wanted to love Danny from then onwards. This was question number 8. Let's move on to the next question. Explain why Nikki, Danny's mom, and his grandmother changed their views about Danny after the race. Well, Danny had put in all his effort, and he had shown the signs of maturity. So that is why his grandmother, his mom, and Nikki, they all have realized that Danny had come out of his childhood towards the adulthood. Let me rephrase this answer for you again. Danny's mom, his grandmother, and Nikki had changed their views about Danny after the race because they had seen him fight with the odds, fight with the problems with zest and zeal. They have seen him how he had fought hard to win the race, and thus they had to change their views regarding Danny. As Danny was no longer a baby, he had entered into the adulthood. Why do you think Danny thought a moment before calling and thanks for coming? Why do you think Danny thought? ठीक है, यहाँ पे मिसिंग है। Danny thought for a moment before calling and thanks for coming because he was in his mind fighting a debate whether it was Danny's right for his grandparents to come and see his race or whether they had been kind to him, right? Danny had been under so much cruelty and wickedness by Chris that he did not know how a kind attitude is to be responded with. So he had to think for a moment and then he had to ask them that it was a great gesture from their part to come and watch Danny's performance. यहाँ पर है vocabulary meanings दी हुई है और आपसे ये कहा गया है कि ये words text में यूज हुए हैं, इनकी आपने literal meanings लिखनी है. मैंने आपको कर दी है. To sustain the pace, to keep pace. Danny tried his level best to sustain the pace in order to win the race. The final straight, ultimate and concluding. At a distance of 50 yards, Danny tried to speed himself up for the final straight. Keeping stride, not delayed. Danny tried to not only keep stride with the winning boy, but to beat him up in the race as well. The finishing line, he could see the finishing line looming ahead in front of him, and he wanted to be the first person to reach it. A final spurt. Finally, Danny built up all his strength, combined all his effort for the final spurt. The decisive break. It was the decisive break, but he lost his senses afterwards and did not know whether he had stood first or second in the race. The front runners or the leaders. Danny was among the front runners, but that was not enough for him. He wanted to be the winner. Next two question है task 2 आपका vocabulary का. वो कह रहे हैं कि what does it mean when a car runs on empty? A car runs on empty का मतलब है कि गाड़ी में पेट्रोल है नहीं और वो उससे चल रही है. Why is it an effective phrase to describe Danny? Danny के पास ना ही मोहब्बत थी, ना ही चाहत थी, ना ही होप था, ना ही फैमिली की बॉन्डिंग थी और ना ही फैमिली की सपोर्ट थी. So he was running on empty and he had anticipated getting all these things after his win. So he was running empty-handed and he expected to get all of it through the win that he was so much so looking forward to, right? So these are the task 1 and task 2 of your vocabulary of unit 10. Let's quickly recapitulate today's lesson. What did we do? We did unit 10 achievement in specific, and we did the comprehension, the race. We did its questions, reading for understanding and vocabulary, task 1 and task 2. We also constructed sentences and I've given you the helping words and phrases. You have to construct your own sentences, ठीक है? Verbally मैंने कहा है सुनो और लिखो. मुझे दुआओं में याद रखो, हंसते खेलते रहो और जब तक मैं दोबारा आपसे मिलती हूँ ये सारा काम करके रखना, ठीक है? अल्लाह हाफ़िज़.